Hello and welcome. I am Scrapalog, and this is City of Heroes. We are with Liberty Lass, who now has under a million XP to go to get to level 41. We're working on a story arc against the Malta, and I just wanted to point out we have been logged off of Portal Corp for a while, 32 hours, I guess, and we have whatever it is, 78 hours, 68 hours to go. So basically, the way this works is 1% for every hour you spend logged off. So I guess it was 32 hours ago since the last time I played. I guess so because I was playing Deadlands yesterday in the morning and I ran a mission before that, and it's been about 8 hours, more than 24 hours since then. Yep, looking at the clock, that is true. So we're at Portal Corp, but we don't really need that. We're working for Indigo, and she is sending us against the Malta. So now we're going to go to Brickstown. And the easiest way to do that is going to come over here. Wait, they moved it. That's right, they moved the base portal. It used to be right here. I actually think this was a fairly convenient place to put it, but that's alright. We'll just teleport straight to the base using our little teleporter. And then we're going to head to Brickstown and investigate the Malta. I think this is the story arc where you find the picture of the Malta group in Malta in the 1960s and how they formed it. First, you have to save Jim Bartlett. Is this Thunderhead? So you have to watch out here. We do have Taunt, but we want to make sure he doesn't get himself beaten up. So yeah, I had my Deadlands game yesterday. It was a lot of fun. The characters faced an infernal bartender. It's really interesting. A lot of the Savage Tales in the Deadlands modules are really very skeletal. So basically, this is a storyline where in the town of Bridger in Headstone Hill. Spoiler alert, by the way, for anybody who wants to play the horror at Headstone Hill. Don't listen to these because I might spoil it. But in the town of Bridger, and you can run this at any point. But since they had taken the train to Bridger because I deviated from the way the game is supposed to, the thing is supposed to start. Um, I um, I had them start somewhere else, and they were taking the train to Headstone Hill. So we're 2 sessions in, and they haven't actually gotten to Headstone Hill yet. I told them they should get their next session, and when they arrive, it's been enough of an ordeal that I'm going to give them an advance just for getting to Headstone Hill, which is not what you're normally supposed to do, right? Normally, you're supposed to just read them a blurb, hand them a player's handout, and then they start on the streets of Headstone Hill, right? Or coming into it on a stagecoach. So in any case, they're in the town of Bridger, and I'll admit, as I said, I think in the last episode, I'm not 100% ready for them to go into Headstone Hill. I am trying to go through every single building, and there are 62 of them. Cut out that section of the journal that deals with just that building, make a separate entry for it, so that I can put it as a clickable thing on the map that only the GM can see. And as I go through each one, I am using a Google Sheet spreadsheet to update all of the NPCs in that building and their attitudes, personalities, whether they're a replicant or not, because there are some creatures that have been replaced by basically people have been replaced by basically pod people, and so I want to make an index, a list of all the replicants, because it says in the building who the replicants are, like in the building. I've only come across one so far in the first 15 establishments, but more people are going to be turned into replicants during the course of the campaign until the players find out what's going on and presumably stop it. And so, so yeah, I created I made sure on the spreadsheet I noted who's a replicant. I'm creating a separate list within Foundry in the journals of replicants, and I basically created a list of factions so I can keep track of who's in which faction. And so this takes a lot of work, and I may be, at this point about 20% done. Our scheduling conflicted a little bit, so we're not going to play again for another 3 weeks, and that's going to happen as finals are finishing up. Hopefully, once I'm done grading finals and everything, I'll have a little bit more time. And what I'm trying to do is go through and just make, just do like 2 or 3 rooms per um, per day, and in 20 days that'll be about 60, not rooms, but buildings. That'll be about 60 buildings, and that should take care of most of it. And so I wasn't 100% ready, so what I did was I said, let me do the Savage Tale in Bridger because it's short. Basically, it's an infernal bartender, right? This automaton that the bar owner, the saloon owner, bought, I guess, from Hellstrom Industries as a barkeep, went haywire and is like breaking up, destroying the bar with like by throwing bottles at people and stuff. And so I just had people running down the street screaming and yelling, this stupid bartender. But the bartender, like, it's just called the Infernal Bartender. I'm like, logically, why doesn't it have a name? Wouldn't she name it? So I named it Big Al. I don't know. And yeah, Big Al has gremlins inside of him and therefore is going haywire. And so they fought Big Al and they were able to destroy him. And then the gremlins popped out and they fought the gremlins and they were able to kill them. Because otherwise the gremlins would go occupy other machinery and make it malfunction. And they did a couple of other things, but that was most of the session. So it was a lot of fun, but it left us still not, in Headstone Hill. And I'm glad about that because I still need, again, it's huge. There are 62 numbered buildings in the town with different characters and stuff. And like I said, some of them are replicants and some of them aren't. And then there's a cult, which is one faction, and then which is also the miners, the independent miners. And then there's another faction, which is Jerem Heaston, who works for Hellstrom Industries. And what I decided was, since I created a new Reckoner called Chaos, right, who is the big sister of the other Reckoners, and they are afraid of her and don't like her, I decided that what's going on is that the Reckoners are conflicting. So Hellstrom used to work for Pestilence. Hellstrom, if you follow the canonical story of the Good Intentions campaign, which is the one that happened just before the beginning of the Weird West timeline, Hellstrom is conflicted because when his whole motivation is to get his wife to get his wife back, and so he was told that she was trapped in hell, and he was trying to create a magical or whatever, a weird science item to get her out. And so this is going to be hard because I can't put my strength of will on. We'll try to nail this guy. There we go. So in Good Intentions, what happens is he actually opens a gate to hell, I guess, and the player characters have to stop him and close the gate and stop whatever's coming through. When Hellstrom realizes that he's been hoodwinked, or that he's been essentially tricked into working for Pestilence, he has sort of a crisis of faith, and I'm not sure what he's going to do. Ultimately, he canonically in the Hell on Earth timeline, he has himself his brain put into the body of an automaton. And that guy was a boss. I didn't realize. I thought he was a lieutenant. That was dumb of me. He has his brain put into the body of an automaton, and then what he ultimately tries to do is cause a nuclear war with Ghost Rock to blow up the Earth, and somehow that's going to save his girlfriend. I'm not her wife. I'm not sure how. I haven't actually read that content, so just the summary of it. And then that leads to Deadlands Lost Colony, where Hellstrom goes to another planet. And so, I mean, ultimately, I think he's going to start working for the Reckoners again, canonically. But I don't care what the future stuff is supposed to be. We're not going to play Hell on Earth. So, and I have Lost Colony, and I wouldn't mind running it. But unfortunately, there are no Foundry modules for it, and I'm not going to take all of that stuff and manually put it into Foundry. It would take months and not be fun, right? I mean, the whole purpose of role-playing games is to have fun, and manually porting a bunch of crap into Foundry is not fun. I learned that when I was running my D&D game. So I pretty much now only want to engage in content in Foundry that is already modules, and I can just buy it and port it in. other than making my own maps. So in any case, Hellstrom is still there. He's kind of backed off, and this has allowed Jerem Heaston of Heaston Mining, who's works for Hellstrom, for Hellstrom Industries, to sort of step up and take the lead. And so he's taking the lead in Headstone Hill because there's this huge giant source of ghost rock, and he's in there to try to mine it and rip it out of there. And also, Smith and Robards, who run the Denver Pacific, this is part of the module, they serve the area, that part of Wyoming, Uinta County, and Wasatch Trail, which is owned by Hellstrom Industries, is trying to take over and replace them. And Houston is trying to help them do that. So I've got that faction, and then the other faction is what's called the Cult of the Critter. And so what's actually going on in Headstone Hill, canonically, is that the aspen forest, where the sort of underground roots are it's all connected as one giant, almost superorganism, which aspens kind of do in real life. They are, we're going to Paris Park, right? Yeah. The aspens are have come alive because their roots have gone down into the ghost rock. There's even more ghost rock there than people realize underground, and it's turned them sentient and evil. And they're the ones who are like turning the townsfolk into pod people, right? Am I being ambushed? Oh, cool. So in the book, what's supposed to happen is replicants are hatched, essentially. They then find a person to replicate within a certain period of time, or they decompose, and then they copy you, they kill you, right? They become you, and now they're a little odd if you're known, but they basically have replicated, and then they try to kidnap more people and make more replicants, and that sort of thing. And the tree is just a sentient tree that's evil because of ghost rock. And there's the miners faction, or the guy who leads the miners, the independent miners, is actually, he discovered this tree and he made a deal with it. If the tree leaves him and his cult alone, he'll get more prey for the tree and more people to the replicants. And the tree is trying to expand its influence outwards. So canonically, the guy who is working for the tree is just willing to burn the whole town down and get out with a bunch of ghost rock. And he's using the tree to attack his enemies, right? And so the tree is kind of being manipulated by him. I don't know if it cares, but it's kind of being manipulated by him. However, a lot of people who've run Headstone Hill say that's not really a good story, and I kind of agree. And so what I did is, because I have Chaos, which is my own invention derived from Jordan Callerman from the Wildcard show, Deadlands, on the Saving Throw channel, where Jordan played the game with Megan Caves and Dom Zook and Jordan Pridgeon and Gaurav Galati and Talene, I can't remember her last name, Guerra, I think. Chaos is another extra reckoner. And so what I decided to do was I decided that the mining guild, the independent miners, the cult of the critter as it's called, that works for the tree, and the tree are all chaoses, right? So Chaos, not Ghost Rock, created the tree, and Frank Debony, who is the head of the mining guild, is kind of like Chaos's servitor, and Debony and the cult are working for Chaos. And I don't know if the cult knows it, but Debony knows it. And the tree, to the extent that it can know anything, knows it. And so what's really going on, because there's supposed to be like a mining faction, the independent miners faction versus Heaston Mining Corporation, and it's an economic fight, right? That leads to, it's supposed to lead to a big battle on the streets. But I think that's boring. I think it's a lot more interesting if it turns out that it's Pestilence's servitor, Heaston, who's working for Helgrim and stuff, fighting against Chaos's. And I wonder if it's interesting, and it may be that the player characters are going to have to ally with Pestilence to stop Chaos. I don't know the answer to that. because I'm not sure what's going to happen. Right? I've just got these two factions set up, and they're going to be going at it, and the players are going to be investigating what's going on and trying to figure out, how to stop it, I guess. And this guy's really pounding me. What is he? +2 boss. And even with my strength of will going, he's doing a number on me. I think it's because he's firing non-lethal bullets, right? Fire and ice. Wow. Still not getting a lot of enhancement drops. So yeah, I think what I've done is I've turned this into two evil, very evil forces are fighting each other, and the people in the town are the victims. I know one of the GMs who ran it said if you run it as written, basically by the end, and the one guy said like his players basically killed everybody, burned the town down, and walked away. And they sort of said that canonically that's kind of what you're expected to do. Almost like the town's going to have no redeeming people in it by the end because everybody's been replicated, unless the players are very fast and efficient and figure out what's going on really quickly. And so I don't really like that idea, but what I love is the idea that you've got these two evil factions fighting each other for dominance, and the players come in and they're trying to save, the third quote-unquote faction is the town, right? The innocent people who live in the town. But it may be the case, I simply don't know what's going to happen as we go and how many people are going to get replicated and so forth. It may simply be the case that the players are going to have to ally with one of the Reckoners to stop the other one. And that'll be interesting. I'm interested to see what happens if they hit the heroic level, because when they do, I won't do it right away, but maybe a couple of advances into the rank, maybe the second or third advance. We'll see how long things are looking to go. If it looks like we're going toward the end, I'll do it earlier. But there are the Devil Bowls, the Los Diablos, and again, and this is not part of Headstone Hill, but supposedly once the players turn heroic, the Reckoners have now taken real interest in them, and they're not happy with them, and the Reckoners send one of these Devil Bowls per player character. And only the target of the bull can damage it. So, and they're really tough. So I don't know. That's what caused the TPK in Jordan Callerman's game. Those players are really good, and they didn't figure out what was going on, and so I don't know. The way the Devil Bull is written, it says that only the target of the bull can damage it, but it's not clear to me. And by the way, if anybody knows what's supposed to be, go ahead and post in the comments. It's not clear to me from the text if the Devil Bowls, if that means that only player characters and no NPCs can affect the Devil Bowls during the scene, but that all the player characters can affect all the Devil Bowls, or if it means that each player has a single Devil Bowl key to their character. So if the Devil Bowl is going after Liberty Lass and she's on a team, nobody else on the team can damage it. That's the way, I think that's the way Jordan Callerman played it. And yeah, that led to the TPK. So I may do it differently. I may just allow them to fight, because they're so tough. But I don't know. I mean, the player characters have access to really powerful spells. 3 of them are spellcasters. One of them has the ability to cast a spell that the Hexslinger can fire bullets that automatically have the weakness of the target. So I think that would work against the Devil Bowls. So just that alone might be enough to take hers out. Now it might be that they have to be immune to everybody else, or otherwise the Hexslinger can just one-shot each of them one at a time and, make it too easy. I just don't know. That may be a battle I'm going to have to actually playtest just to see, because I don't want it to be too hard, but I definitely want it to be difficult. I don't want it to be too easy either. Just checking here to make sure. I haven't missed anything. Let's go into this other room here. Sometimes there's a glowy, usually there isn't, but sometimes there is, but I don't hear anything. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm super amped about this whole Deadlands game, and I'm really enjoying Hard Headstone Hill. I know there are some tweaks that have to be made, but thankfully, by just sheer luck of deciding to plagiarize Jordan Caves Callerman's Chaos, and the only reason I did it was because when I first thought of getting them out of the blood drive before we decided to shift as a group, right? I was suspecting they were going to say they wanted to get off of it, and the only way I could think of to get characters from different places together was to have Chaos do it, right? To have somebody supernatural do it. And so that occurred to me, and I was like, okay. So then once I had made the character up, and then we had some deaths, and the characters are coming from various places, I said, okay, I'll just do this thing with Chaos anyway. And because of that, I lucked into a character, a villain, who could serve as the source of power for this stuff that's going on in Uinta County, as my best friend even detected with all the different things going on. He said this all sounds very chaotic, right? Very disorganized. And so I think it's just the perfect villain for that. And again, it's just luck that I decided to copy it from Caloran. And it's just a great villain, right? And a villain who can actually serve this really cool purpose. At one point, when they were fighting the infernal bartender, the owner has to be convinced to let you destroy it, and she finally yells out, "Okay, if you want to destroy it, fine, but you're going to reimburse me." And so one of the player characters, actually the mad scientist, said, "I'm out," and started walking out of the saloon. And the other player characters weren't sure what to do, and it seemed like they were all just going to leave her to it. And well, that's not going to be a very satisfying conclusion to this thing. And it just so happened it was a long enough battle that we took a break. Like, we do a 5-minute break in the middle of the session for, going to the bathroom and stuff. And so I actually I use these eye drops, and so I went to take some eye drops, and as I was doing it, I thought, oh, if I want to try to sort of coax them into staying around to finish the tale, instead of just leaving it, I have an idea. I could have, because Jordan Callerman did this at multiple times during his campaign, I could have Chaos just sort of not actually show up, but influence things. So, again, Chaos introduced herself to them with this really creepy piano music that she was playing, and then she stood up and the piano played by itself, even though it wasn't a player piano. And I had already described that the piano had been severely damaged by the infernal bartender. And oh boy, I didn't see that coming. He got me again. All my powers just about went off. Re-engaging them takes forever too. Come on. Let's just hit the invulnerability for now. Yeah, I didn't realize. Like, I sort of clocked that there were 2 hostages here, and I didn't realize there was a sapper. Man, all the missing with 75% to hit. So anyway, what I had happen when we came back from our couple-minute break was that it was the end of a round, and I said, okay, before the next round, all of a sudden, the piano starts going, and you hear this creepy piano music, and I played a little of it, and then I said the one guy who was one of the townsfolk was hiding under the table looks at them and starts laughing, and you hear Chaos's voice coming out of his mouth, and she says, "So, do you like my little game with the gremlins at this crazy machine? I hope you're enjoying it. I'm having fun," or something like that. So there they realize, okay, well, if Chaos is doing this and we oppose Chaos, We probably should find a way to stop this. And so they stayed and they handled it. They basically put the machine to sleep. It's really weird. There's nothing in the stat block that says it's immune to the sleep spell. It's immune to like fear and paralysis and poison and stuff, but it's not immune to sleep. So I let them put it to sleep, and then they had to figure out, because they said you can still hear the gremlins cackling from inside. So they had to figure out how to deal with the gremlins. So they went and got some dynamite and they blew it up. And then after blowing it up, the gremlins popped out and then they shot the gremlins, and that was the end of the session. The gremlins are pretty weak. They're hard to hit because they're small, but other than that, they're pretty weak. And they only have like a 2 toughness, so if you do 6 damage or more, they're dead. So it was a good, because they fought like an almost impossible to hurt thing, and they struggled with that, and then they were able to defeat it after a lot of like sort of a struggle. And then when they fought the gremlins, it was like an easy battle. So it was a lot of fun, and I hope they enjoyed it. I certainly did. But I lucked into this idea that we have Chaos here, we have Wasatch Rail, which is Hellstrom Industries here, and Hellstrom works for a different Reckoner. So yeah, I could see the Reckoners fighting each other and their forces not getting along. And it'll be interesting to see if the player characters end up siding with one of them. My guess is if they side with anybody, it'd be Pestilence, right? Because Chaos is much more dangerous than Pestilence is. But I don't know. And I mean, I have the book of Deadlands Lost Colony. I would so love, after running a regular Deadlands Weird West game, to go into the future and run Lost Colony. I'd probably make some pretty severe tweaks to the canonical lore, since the lore includes Deadlands Weird War 1 and 2, Deadlands Noir, and Deadlands Hell on Earth, none of which my players know anything about. So what I might do, instead of having Hellstrom be somebody who's like inside of a robot and is like a semi-automaton, I might have him just be a time traveler. But I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it. Might even turn Hellstrom into a bit of a good guy, where he realizes the Reckoners are going to win on Earth, and he went to the other solar system to, and brought some people with him so that that some humanity would still survive, and maybe repent for his sins. I don't know. I feel like Hellstrom is not as evil as the other servitors, but Jerem Heaston, who's now serving Pestilence, is. So anyway, it's going to be really interesting to see how that works out. Please don't be a sapper. Okay. So you can definitely see which inspirations I need fighting these guys, right? It's pretty clear. I need endurance, health, and luck. I don't need a whole lot of to hit or damage. I'm doing plenty of damage to these guys. Okay, there's a sapper. So we're going to wait until all of our stuff recharges. We're going to go at him real fast if we can. Got him. See, stunning him is the big deal. If you can do that, you're safe. If you can't, that's when he gets you, and they're very accurate. And the other problem is this character doesn't really have a lot of defense. I don't know what type of attack that's meant to be. It's probably energy, but I'm not sure. So we have one more hostage who may be in one of these back rooms. I do like these robot things. They look like Transformers, kind of. Pretty cool. Don't like the burn patches that they use, but they're pretty cool. We are almost done with level 40 already, guys. Only 3 or 4 more beads to go. 4 more beads. So not almost done. We're more than halfway done. All right, so let's go down. Yeah, so if you're running a game, if you're working on adventures and you're using published stuff, it's always best to use the published materials as a springboard idea factory for you rather than trying to follow it slavishly. And they actually say that in Headstone Hill. They're like, don't try to make it go the way it says in here. Just go with what you and your you and your posse find fun. And I definitely agree with that advice. Use it as inspiration, but don't slavishly follow it. One of the great examples is there's a detective agency, and I have to say, some of it's a bit lazy, right? So they say, okay, use the gunman profile for the, I think it's the daughter of the detective. Oh, I'm gonna have to find the last guy, and I don't know where the last guy is. Oh, here he is. Um, but there's nothing in the text about there's nothing in the text about her specifically. It just says use the gunman profile, and all the like the veteran gunman profile says greedy and ruthless, but that's for crooks, right? So that's kind of lazy to me. And almost every person that uses the gunman profile is greedy and ruthless. Well, how many greedy, ruthless people can you have in a campaign, right? That's just ridiculous. So I actually made her heroic and have a code of honor, and so she's actually, because the detectives, the one detective agency that I worked on is not already under Jerem Heaston's control. Um, they're not necessarily good guys; they're sort of neutral. But she's a decent, honorable person who wants to just do her job properly. So she's somebody that the posse, at least when I run it, the posse might be able to get on their side. Whereas I think in the book they probably don't expect that to be possible. I don't really know. And oh, by the way, I do want to say if you're planning on getting the module, just be prepared. There's a lot of laziness. It's got everything in it, but it was extremely lazily done in some places. For example, there are wildcards that don't have the wildcard tag. So it looks like an extra that can take 3 wounds, but it's actually a wildcard in the book. So they did it wrong, and there are a whole bunch of extras that are sitting there with 2 bennies, even though they're not supposed to have them, because they took a wild card stat block and downgraded it to make the extra, and then they just forgot. And the other thing that I think is really sloppy is all of the description boxes in the little stat blocks are the description boxes from the generic thing that's part of the Deadlands, like bestiary, instead of having anything about the actual character. So what I've done is I've gone into, this is what's taken me so long. Like says somebody who's in the saloon and it's the gunslinger and his name is the Earl and his nickname. He's actually from England and he was disowned by his family and blah blah blah. I took that little block of text where it's explaining that the Earl is disowned from his family. He's having an affair with this one woman, but he's secretly in love with another woman. I copied it and I pasted it into his stat block in the description box of the stat block. They should have done that so that when you open up the character sheet, you see his motivations. You shouldn't have to look in the room where he's sitting, right? The building where he's sitting to find out his personality and motivations. Because the player characters might not meet him in that building. And they also should have a link to that building on his stat block, but they don't. So I put those in there, but it takes a lot of work. There were like 150 NPCs and 62 buildings, right? And I've done like 50 of the NPCs, and I'm about 15 buildings in, right? So I'm only maybe a quarter of the way through it. It's a lot of work. I shouldn't have to do all of that work. They should have done that for me, and I found that really frustrating. The other thing I would warn you is there are a number of maps that they provide only the GM version of the map, even though there's a player version in the box set. And so you have to either use the PDF of it that comes with the box set that I got for free and copy it into your virtual tabletop, at least for the Foundry module. Or, like one of them, they didn't have a player version of it, anywhere, but it's got a bunch of like the Heaston Hill vicinity, but it's got a bunch of spoilers on it. So I had to take it into Photoshop and use content aware fill to get rid of it so that I could give the players a map of the area surrounding Headstone Hill. This kind of stuff is sloppy to me. And when you're paying $40 for a module, it should be correct. And yeah, that is kind of annoying. And if there was any spot on Pinnacle's website to give a review, like 1 to 5 stars, I'd give him like 4. And I'd say the reason I'm docking you a star is there's some sloppiness in here. And yeah, it's a lot easier than typing it all in myself, but it's still a lot more work than it should be. So anyway, word to the wise, the blood drive module was, if anything, worse in that regard. So word to the wise, if you're planning to buy these things, just be aware it's going to take some work on your part. Public service announcement. Let's stop there, guys. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.